Time stops, then starts again. Detective William Murdoch stands in the middle of a crime scene, his eyes fixed on a clock that just ticked backward. The body on the floor, the same man they saw alive only moments ago. Something is wrong with time itself, and this time, logic might not be enough to solve the case. This is not just another murder. It's a puzzle where past and present collide in the time loop mystery. The episode opens in the quiet streets of Toronto, 1908. The morning fog hangs low, and a soft drizzle paints the cobblestone roads in silver. The camera moves slowly toward a small workshop tucked between two narrow alleyways, a place known for repairing clocks and mechanical gadgets. Inside, the sound of ticking fills the air. Hundreds of clocks line the shelves, each one showing a slightly different time. And right there, in the middle of the workshop, lies the lifeless body of a man, the clockmaker himself. Detective William Murdoch enters the scene wearing his signature bowler hat and calm expression. His partner, Constable George Crabtree, follows behind, slightly uneasy. The constable mutters, "Sir, the strange part is no one heard a thing." And all these clocks, they stopped at exactly 9:17. Murdoch glances at his pocket watch. It too flickers for a second before showing the same time, 9:17. The mystery begins not with blood or violence, but with silence and time standing still. As the team begins to examine the room, Dr. Julia Ogden arrives to inspect the body. She notices no external wounds. There's no sign of struggle or struggle, she says softly. But look at his expression. He seems terrified, as if he saw something impossible. Murdoch kneels beside the man, his sharp eyes scanning every detail. The strange metal device clutched in the victim's hand, a notebook filled with equations, and a single line scribbled on the last page. If time repeats, truth can't hide. Outside, the streets remain quiet, but an uneasy atmosphere hangs in the air. Crabtree notices something odd, a man across the street staring at them, the same man they saw earlier when they first arrived at the scene. Yet when Murdoch turns to look, the man is gone. "Strange," Crabtree whispers. "It's like we've been here before." Murdoch doesn't respond immediately. Instead, he walks toward the window, looking out at the clock tower in the distance, its large hands stuck at 9:17, matching every clock in the room. Back at the station, Inspector Bracken Reed listens carefully as Murdoch describes the scene. The inspector scoffs. "A time loop? Come on, Murdoch, we solve crimes, not ghost stories." But Murdoch isn't joking. He spreads the victim's notes across the desk. Diagrams of gears, electric circuits, and sketches of what looks like a portable time device. This man, Henry Mallory, wasn't just a clockmaker, Murdoch explains. He was working on something beyond our understanding, perhaps a machine meant to manipulate time. Julia, who has been reviewing the autopsy report, interrupts with a new detail. There's something else. His body temperature is unusually low, as if it had been frozen, but only for a few seconds. The room falls silent. Murdoch's mind begins to race. Could Mallory have activated the device and accidentally trapped himself in a loop that ended his own life? Or is someone else using his invention for a darker purpose? The next morning, Murdoch returns to the workshop. The rain has stopped, but something feels off. He looks around, and for a brief moment, everything seems to replay. Crabtree's footsteps, the faint ticking of clocks, even Julia's voice calling his name, all repeating just as they did before. Time seems to stutter again. Murdoch looks at his pocket watch. It flickers once more and returns to 9:17. He knows now that this mystery is not just about a murder. It's about time itself breaking apart. The section ends with a chilling moment. As Murdoch turns to leave the workshop, he notices a reflection in the clock glass. The face of the dead clockmaker standing behind him, whispering, "Find the loop before it finds you." The screen fades to black, and the title card appears, Murdoch Mysteries, the Time Loop Mystery. The morning after the eerie discovery, Murdoch sits alone in his office, reviewing the strange notebook found in Mallory's hand. The equations are complicated, far beyond the level of an ordinary craftsman. Lines of calculations describe energy pulses, magnetic fields, and something Murdoch has never seen before. A pattern that repeats endlessly, much like time folding onto itself. Julia enters quietly, holding a cup of tea. "You haven't slept," she says softly. Murdoch gives a faint smile, eyes still on the pages. "Neither has time, apparently," he replies. Meanwhile, Constable Crabtree is busy interviewing the people who knew Henry Mallory. A young apprentice from the workshop explains that Mallory had been obsessed lately, talking about fixing the flow of time and warning others that something was coming back. When Crabtree asks what he meant, the apprentice hesitates and says, "He kept saying the past doesn't stay buried, that it loops around until someone sets it right." Crabtree writes it down, shaking his head. "A clockmaker afraid of time, that's new," he mutters. At the same time, Inspector Brackenreed grows impatient. He wants results, not theories about time travel. "Murdoch, we've got a dead man and a pile of nonsense," he says, slamming his fist on the table. "Find me a suspect, not a ghost." Murdoch remains calm. He picks up one of the broken pieces from Mallory's device and places it under the magnifier. "It's not nonsense, sir. Look, the circuitry is lined with copper and quartz, similar to an experimental machine used to generate electromagnetic fields." Brackenreed frowns, still skeptical. "So what? Maybe he electrocuted himself." Murdoch nods slowly. "Perhaps, but why did every clock in the city stop at the exact same time?" Later that afternoon, Murdoch and Julia return to the scene with new instruments. Using one of his own inventions, a handheld electromagnetic scanner, Murdoch detects faint energy residue around the workshop. "It's as if a surge of power was released here," he explains. Julia adds, "like a lightning strike but contained inside the room." As they move deeper, Murdoch notices burn marks on the floor forming a perfect circle. At the center of it lies a small metallic gear with symbols engraved along its edge, symbols resembling ancient time markings. Murdoch carefully picks it up. "This isn't just machinery," he whispers. "It's a signature." Outside, Crabtree rushes in with new information. "Sir, I found something odd. Mallory was recently contacted by a Professor Alden Finch, a physicist dismissed from the university for dangerous experiments." Murdoch's eyes narrow. "Dangerous in what way?" Crabtree hands him a letter. The handwriting is neat but hurried, the words alarming. "Henry, we are close. If we can bend time backward, even for a moment, we can rewrite what should never have happened." Murdoch folds the paper and looks up. "We need to find this man." That evening, the team visits Finch's residence, an old, dimly lit house filled with scientific equipment. The professor, a frail man with trembling hands, greets them nervously. "Detective, I've been expecting you," he says, voice shaking. "Henry told me you'd come." Murdoch raises an eyebrow. "You spoke to him before his death?" Finch nods, eyes wide with guilt. "We were trying to correct a mistake from 10 years ago." Julia leans forward. "What mistake?" The professor looks down. "A failed experiment, one that killed my wife. Henry believed time could give me another chance." Murdoch listens intently as Finch explains how they built a prototype that could temporarily distort time by manipulating electromagnetic waves. "It wasn't meant to kill him," Finch pleads. "He must have activated it alone." The loop must have caught him inside. Murdoch studies the professor's eyes, unsure if he's telling the full truth. "If this machine truly affects time," he says, "then we may not be dealing with one death, but several, trapped in the same moment." As they leave, Julia looks uneasy. "Do you believe him?" she asks. Murdoch doesn't answer right away. "I believe something impossible happened," he finally says, "and whatever it is, it's not finished." Moments later, as they walk past the city clock tower, something astonishing happens. The air grows heavy and the sound of the clock chime echoes strangely, repeating the same note twice. Murdoch stops. The street around them flickers. For a second, everything resets to where it was a few minutes earlier. Julia gasps, "William, did time just repeat?" Murdoch looks at his watch again. 9:17, glowing faintly. "It's happening again," he whispers. The episode tightens its grip here. The mystery deepens, the tension rises, and Murdoch begins to realize that this is not just about solving a crime. It's about breaking a cycle that could trap the entire city in the same moment forever. As the section closes, the narration slows. Time isn't just passing, it's watching. And in this loop, even the past refuses to die. The next day begins like any other, or at least it should have. Murdoch walks into station house number 4, greeting Crabtree, who is already pouring himself a cup of coffee. But as Murdoch reaches his desk, something strange happens. Crabtree says, "Good morning, sir," in the exact same tone, the same words, and even spills the same drop of coffee on his sleeve, just like yesterday. Murdoch pauses, his eyes narrowing. "Did this already happen?" he asks quietly. Crabtree laughs, thinking it's a joke. But deep down, Murdoch feels the air thicken, a déjà vu too precise to ignore. Moments later, Inspector Bracken Reed storms in, holding the morning newspaper. "Murdoch! That clockmaker's death. The press is calling it a curse of time," he snaps. The inspector's words echo exactly as they did the day before. Murdoch glances at the wall clock. It ticks once, then again, then stops completely. 9:17. The same moment. Again. The detective knows what he's seeing isn't imagination. Time is looping, and he's inside it. Murdoch decides to test his theory. He places his hat on the left side of his desk, something he never does. When the scene resets again, he checks. The hat is back on the right. The day keeps restarting, erasing every change except for his memory. He alone remembers what's happening. This realization chills him, but it also gives him an advantage. If time is repeating, he can use each loop to find new clues. In the next loop, Murdoch returns to the workshop earlier than before. He inspects the device again, now more carefully. The energy marks glow faintly when touched with metal. He writes notes, testing small theories each time the loop restarts. With every repetition, he learns something new. That the machine reacts to movement, that the gear with ancient symbols connects to a magnetic pulse, and that the clock tower may be acting as an amplifier. The whole city, he whispers to himself, is part of the circuit. Meanwhile, Julia begins to notice subtle changes in Murdoch's behavior. He finishes her sentences before she speaks, knows what she's about to say, and seems to predict small events before they happen. "William, how could you know that?" she finally asks. He hesitates, then admits the truth. "Because I've seen it already, Julia." Again and again. At first, she thinks he's exhausted, but his steady gaze convinces her otherwise. He isn't delusional. He's trapped. To test the limits of the loop, Murdoch decides to visit Professor Finch again. But when he arrives, Finch's home is empty. Only a faint humming sound remains, coming from the basement. There, he discovers a hidden room filled with old blueprints and photographs. One photograph catches his eye, a picture of Henry Mallory standing beside a younger version of Finch, holding a device that looks exactly like the one found at the crime scene. But behind them, faint and blurry, stands another figure, a man who looks shockingly like Murdoch himself. His breath catches. "Impossible," he whispers. He flips the photo over and finds a handwritten date, 1898, 10 years ago. Julia later confirms that the photograph is genuine, not tampered with. "William, if this is real," she says softly, "you were there before you even knew this case existed." Murdoch feels the weight of the words. Could the loop have reached across time, pulling him into a past version of himself? Is he part of the event he's trying to solve? The realization becomes heavier when the loop begins to collapse faster. Each reset now comes sooner, hours instead of days. The more Murdoch interferes, the shorter the time resets become. The world around him begins to flicker like a broken film reel. Streets flash between night and day. Voices echo out of sync. Julia's hand passes through a table for a split second before stabilizing again. The distortion is growing stronger, threatening to erase reality itself. Murdoch races against time, Artemo. Literally, he gathers all the clues, the gear with the markings, the magnetic residue, in the final pages of Mallory's notebook. The formula written there describes a way to stop the loop by returning the original gear to the clock tower mechanism at exactly 9:17, the time everything began. If I'm right, he says, we can end this. If I'm wrong, time might end us instead. As he prepares for the final attempt, Julia insists on helping. You can't do this alone, she says. Murdoch hesitates but nods. If we don't fix it, we'll both keep living this same moment forever. Together, they head toward the clock tower as the city trembles under the strange pull of the loop. The sound of gears grinding grows louder, and the tower bells begin to toll. 9:17 approaches again. In the last moments of this section, Murdoch climbs the metal stairs of the tower, each step echoing like thunder. He reaches the mechanism just as the air begins to bend around him, light twisting like glass. He looks at Julia below and says, "No matter how." Many times this repeats, "I'll find you again." Then, as the clock strikes 9:17, he places the gear into the heart of the machine. A burst of light fills the screen. Time shatters, then goes completely silent. The scene fades out slowly. The narration ends this part with a haunting line. "Sometimes, to move forward, you must first return to where it all began." Light, blinding, endless light. For a few seconds, everything disappears. Sound, space, even thought. Then, slowly, the light fades into a warm golden hue. Murdoch opens his eyes, disoriented. He's no longer in the clock tower. He's standing in the same workshop where it all began. Only now it looks different. The walls are cleaner, the machine's new, and the calendar on the wall reads April 3rd, 1898. He's gone back 10 years in time. Murdoch realizes what the device truly did. It didn't just trap time. It tore open a doorway to the moment when the tragedy first occurred. He sees two men in the corner, a younger Henry Mallory and Professor Alden Finch, working feverishly on the very same time device. Their faces are filled with excitement and fear. Murdoch watches quietly from the shadows as they argue. "Henry, stop!" Finch shouts. "The frequency is too unstable." "We can fix it," Mallory replies desperately. "If we get it right, we can reverse what happened to your wife." Murdoch's eyes widen. This was the event that started it all. The day they tried to bend time. The machine hums violently. Sparks burst from its coils. Murdoch knows what comes next. The explosion that killed Finch's wife and started the time distortion. He runs forward to stop them. "Shut it down!" he yells. The two men freeze, staring at him. "Who are you?" Finch demands. Murdoch doesn't have time to explain. "You're about to destroy everything. Time, memory, even yourselves. You have to stop it." Doubt. Mallory looks at him closely, his expression shocked. "You're the man from the dream," he whispers. "You told me this would happen." Murdoch's heart pounds. The loop wasn't random. It was destiny. The message in Mallory's notebook, the warning about truth repeating, all of it came from this very moment. He realizes he was the one who had appeared to Mallory in a previous loop, setting the cycle in motion without knowing it. The detective had been chasing himself all along. But before he can stop the experiment, the machine explodes with a blinding pulse of light. Time freezes again. Murdoch sees Finch's wife standing in the doorway, frozen mid-step, a tear suspended in the air. He rushes to her, but she fades like smoke. Everything begins to rewind rapidly. Seconds folding into minutes, hours into years. Murdoch is pulled through scenes of his own past, old cases, lost friends, moments with Julia, all spinning around him like reflections in a broken mirror. He hears voices overlapping, Crabtree shouting his name, Julia calling out, the ticking of thousands of clocks echoing like thunder. Murdoch tries to hold on to one thought, the present. He remembers Julia's face, her hand reaching for his, and focuses on it with all his strength. The light around him begins to fade again, and suddenly he's back in the clock tower, breathing hard, his hands shaking. The clock's hands are moving again. It's 9:18. Julia rushes to his side. "William, you did it," she says, tears in her eyes. The tower is calm now, no tremors, no distortions. Outside, the city moves normally, carriages rolling, people talking, the day continuing as if nothing happened. Murdoch looks around in disbelief. The loop is broken. Time is free, but something feels different. He checks his pocket watch. The small gear he placed inside it is now missing. In its place, a faint engraving glows. Time remembers. He realizes that while the loop has ended, the memory of it remains. a mark left behind in both him and the world. Julia notices the change in his expression. "What is it?" she asks. Murdoch smiles softly, a reminder that even time can leave scars. Later at the station, Crabtree bursts in cheerfully. "Sir, the clocks are all fixed. Everything's working again. No more 9:17. Brackenreed grumbles in relief. "About time. Now can we finally get back to solving normal murders?" Murdoch and Julia exchange a quiet smile. Some things they both know will never feel normal again. That night, Murdoch stands by his window, watching the clock tower in the distance. Its hands move smoothly, but every once in a while, he thinks he sees them pause, just for a heartbeat, at 9:17. Maybe it's his imagination. Maybe it's time itself, remembering the detective who once stepped into its loop. The narration closes the story softly. In the end, the mystery wasn't about death or machines or even time. It was about the choices we try to undo, the moments we wish we could relive. But time doesn't repeat to punish us. It repeats to remind us what truly matters before it's too late. The music swells,